Just wait, like, yeah, now I'm set.
What is going on, everybody? It is time for Stochastic MLB Live Before Lock, and I have been looking forward to this show, in all honesty, for quite a bit of time. So as you come and like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're sponsored by Sleeper today. We're going to talk about them. That's exciting. But the real reason I'm most excited is because Eric Lindquist is here to join me on MLB Live Before Lock. We have not done a single baseball show together in 8 months, would you say? How long has it been? Like when was the playoffs?
October.
Yeah, so probably about 8 months since we last did a baseball show together. I am legitimately excited about it. Eric and I are going to be breaking down baseball. We're going to be going through our top pitchers, our top stacks. We're going to be looking at the lineup generator, finding some lineups that we could build for you guys. By the way, get access to signing up using the link below for less than $5. We're going to give you a free square over on Sleeper. There's a lot of value in the show today. But Eric, first baseball show of the year. You got some rust on you got to kick off, or how are you feeling about this?
So second baseball show of the year. First with you. I got to do one with the UMAC on Sunday, which that officially kicked off my MLB DFS season. I'd kind of been taking it easy. I'd maybe played like 12 slates total over the course of the year up until now, but with NBA dwindling down, not covering that, not betting NBA as much because, well, tonight I'm firing up NBA in bulk, and Sleeper's probably the best place to do it. The only place I believe with a pick'em that has a free square attached to it. So I'm going to be firing up a pick'em card. I'm going to be posting that here on my Twitter in the next 10 minutes or so. Good stuff over there. So, but as NBA's been dwindling down, been focused on MLB, and then our Sims tool has got me really excited to be diving back into the street. So I'm going to be utilizing that tonight as well. We have the lineup generator, which I think just kind of your bare bones, getting into the streets, keeping all of the muck out for you. We're doing the hard work for you in the lineup generator. And then you get a little bit more hands-on intensive with the stochastic sims. So I've been toying around with it. I know you have too. It is really fun stuff.
Yeah. And then also, this is really your first baseball show of the year, for being honest, because when you do a show with EMAC hosting, you kind of sit there and listen to ad reads for most of the time. Like every once in a while, you get to give some input into what's happening in the sports world, but it's really,
oh no,
but it's really what's happening, gamers. Every once in a while, depending how lucid he is for a day, he may or may not know where his location is. And then he does some ad reads. So this is your first baseball show of the day. The other one, you sat in on a show where an old man meandered about and occasionally did some ad reads. So this is going to be the first time you get to do analyst work on the baseball show. Is that fair to say?
I mean, it's seniority. I mean, he's had it. He's the only one who's been born since 1484 in this.
I call it dementia. You call it seniority, whatever. It's got different words. It's got all different kinds of.
What's going on, gamers?
Yeah. What's happening, gamers? It's all different. By the way, EMAC, the best articles in the baseball world that he writes. Far. Yeah. He writes not even on typewriter. He writes this on Quill. He writes them on Quill, which he's been doing since the Black Sox scandal. So EMAC, some of the base.
It's like ChatGPT, but the opposite.
Yeah. It's, well, ChatGPT, you know how it learns from people?
Yeah.
It didn't learn anything from EMAC, but just like in general, it's one of those things that learns from the people in general, and EMAC wouldn't be able to use it because it's technology. But anyway, is EMAC in chat today? Unfortunately, no. We do have some super chats coming in. First from Jorge. Jorge Giacomi says, who is this weirdo that is, I think he meant, who is this weirdo that is with you today, Greg? He said, who is this weirdo that is you today, Greg? That is always me. But yeah, I was a little more excited a few minutes ago. Yeah, but we got Eric here today. Ace of Spade wants to know who we're liking for DK tiers today. So here's something that Neil and I have been doing for Ace of Spade's question that I actually like quite a bit. Could you pull up Josh Engelman's Twitter account, Eric? Because Josh has been doing projections for tiers that he typically tweets out.
It's pretty sick.
If he has it for today, which by the way, he actually, the ChatGPT tie-in, he actually built it out through ChatGPT, some sims that he does for himself for the DK tiers. So what Neil and I have been doing is I run lineups with tiers using our projections. We compare it to some of Josh's results, and then we try to figure out like who are some of the best options for tiers, and then also some different stacks that we could build in tiers. And I know we got a lot of our audience likes playing the tiers contest now, and Ace of Spade always leaves a super chat about it. And one thing I'm going to note about tiers today is you could build some pretty good looking Dodger stacks. And I'm curious to see if that's what some of Josh's simulations came away with as well today. Did you find Josh's Twitter account? Did he?
I have it. I've got it. Yep. He tweeted it out this morning. So things might have slightly changed here or there, but I think everybody except for Adolis Garcia is not in the lineup today. So tier 2, that is one, as I'm just looking at Josh's Twitter right now, that I know has to change a little bit. But as it stands right now, tier 1, Ronald Acuna, pretty sizable. What is it? Like 2% over Yordan Alvarez. Not super sizable. Mookie Betts then by far in tier 2 over Shohei Ohtani.
And one thing we'll go back and forth here, tier by tier. We don't want to rush this. This tiers content is very important to the people. We got to go back and forth and discuss it a little bit. The thing that I like about Mookie, and by the way, Mookie should be a tier 1 player today.
Yeah.
In this matchup against the Reds. Like there'd be a real good debate to be had.
He's the highest projected player on the slate.
It's crazy to me that you have like Marcus Semien is in tier 1 and then Mookie Betts is in tier 2. And then you also consider the matchup that the Dodgers have. We're going to talk about the Dodgers as a stack in a little bit. I love getting to them. You could stack up the Dodgers pretty easily in tiers, which makes Mookie Betts a key cog to get to in tier 2, in my opinion. And then tier 3, we have a couple more Dodgers we could go to, Freddie Freeman and Will Smith. I lean towards Freddie Freeman. Who did Josh have as his top projected play in tier 3?
Definitely Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, 1-2 in any capacity. I'm going to lean on the Freddie Freeman side of that one. Yesterday, he was my lock to hit a home run. There was just no way around it. Hits the grand slam. Of course, the Dodgers blow it in extras because Caleb Ferguson's an absolute dunce cap. But other than that, it was a decent little day yesterday in the home run department, at least. Hit 3 of my 5. Always a good day when you hit 3 of 5 in the MLB home run department.
Very astute point too by SMP in chat, who said, it's amazing that it isn't even close to the dumbest face that Eric has ever made. Agreed with you, SMP. And we all know exactly what it is that he is referencing from before. Tier 4, I think we have a couple interesting options here. We have Bo Bichette. We have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in tier 4. I think it's very close between the two of them. There's no other Dodgers we could correlate our lineups with. I'm good with Bichette or Vlad. I have a slight lean towards Bichette right now. What do Josh's projections have in tier 4?
We've got Vlad and Bo Bichette. So yeah, Bo Bichette, we got sitting number 2 there. Rafael Devers sitting at 3rd. Interesting to kind of see that fall off there between him and the Blue Jays. I've been playing Rafael Devers quite a bit in the old 5-2, 5-1-1-1 department all season long. I think I will continue to do so. Luis Robert is not obviously playing baseball today. Neither is Gleyber Torres. So we've got a pretty consolidated tier 4 at this point in time. I think you're going to see Vlad get the most ownership there in that tier. We'll find out, but I'm probably with you where I think Bichette or Devers might be my preferred options.
And then if we go to tier 5, this to me is the closest tier of any of them. We've got a lot of good options, but I have an answer.
JD Martinez is in tier 6.
Yeah. So I have an answer for a player I like based on some of the other options we've gone through.
Mm-hmm.
Tier 5, we've got Springer, we've got Alonso, Tucker, Ketel Marte. So there's a lot of good options. The reason I like going to George Springer is because in tier 4, we've already talked about the 2 best options are Bo Bichette and Vlad Guerrero. So I go with Springer here as the tiebreaker because he's going to correlate with who he went with in tier 4. Who did Josh have as his top projected option in tier 5?
So it's weird because he has tier percentage higher on Jose Ramirez, but he's got a higher projection on George Springer. I'm not sure what to make of that. I haven't seen these tweets as much or put any kind of like thought into them. You got Ketel Marte sitting there at 3rd, Kyle Tucker 4th. Kyle Tucker's my homeboy. It's been a little bit of a rough season for him, but the stolen base and homer upside, eventually you're going to see the power return in a pretty noticeable way. I'm probably in agreement with you. George Springer would be my preferred guy.
Yeah, that's how I lean as well. And then if we go to tier 6, JD Martinez all day, all night. That completes the Dodgers stack for us. You could go with Dodgers in tier 2, tier 3, tier 6. You get a 3-man Dodger stack. And I think it's one of the preeminent offenses of the night.
Agreed.
So there we go. Ace of Spade. Thank you for the super chat. Hope that helps you build out your lineups here. If anybody has questions or comments for us, add us in the Discord channel. Eric and I could answer some of your questions. But let's start talking about the pitching for tonight, because this is a fairly shitty pitching slate. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, probably. And I mean, it's gotten progressively more shitty because we've lost baseball games.
So it's funny, earlier in the day when I was doing, because I've been doing the content.
Jam Zach Wheeler, and now you can't.
So the other thing too is I've been doing content with our Sims when I post some stuff on Twitter. I do an initial run. And it's funny because we had a pitcher who's the flat min for the Yankees who wasn't initially in the player pool when I recorded stuff this morning. And then I was thinking, oh, should I redo this? Because Vasquez got added to the player pool. And then the game got canceled. So I was like, okay, we're back where we started at square one with the shitty pitching options here. But we've got Corbin Burnes is currently the chalk of the slate. He's projected for 33% ownership on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, projected for 20%. You know, I love my guy, Corbin Burnes, Eric. We all know this, but if I'm being realistic, he's not quite the same pitcher he was in the past. And while he's been good this year, he's not quite the Cy Young caliber pitcher from a couple of years ago. And he's a fairly difficult matchup against the Orioles. So I think the question ultimately comes here with Corbin Burnes is we know he's a decent pitching option. If you guys are playing cash games, I think you should be going with Corbin Burnes on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I also think he's a really strong consideration. But relative to his ownership, is he somebody you want to be overweight to the field to, about at the field, or underweight to?
Yeah, so I think one of the weird things about MLB DFS as opposed to like playing a year-long situation or betting day in, day out is you look at things like the ground ball rate from 2022 to 2023 for him. I guess even going back to 21, Cy Young season of the year, you won $1 bajillion on him. 50.1% ground ball rate, 47.6% in 2022. 42.5% in 2023 is a little bit worrisome. And you go through some of the pitch mix, you look at the velocity, his mile per hour is down 1 pretty much across the board on every single pitch. The curveball is down about 2.5 miles per hour. So there's at least some concern that I have there in the loss of velocity. You've seen that tail off in terms of the K rate. He's gone from 30.5 to 22.8. We're starting to see a lot of pitchers that are making adjustments to a pitch clock. Maybe he's just in that category of pitchers. We're not going to be able to really know until we get to the back half of the season. But I look at this Baltimore matchup as one that I'm not in love with targeting for sure. I mean, we know the kind of potency that exists there, but I think because of how awful pitching is, if you end up going to some more contrarian stacks, if you find ways away from the Dodgers, away from Coors, away from some of these other spots, I think there's definitely a case to be made for prioritizing Corbin Burnes still.
Yeah, when I was running lineups through the Sims earlier, I was getting to a lot of cheap pitchers, but one of them has been removed for us today. And I was coming in underweight to the field on Corbin Burnes earlier, but that's not the case anymore just because there's a lack of options I kind of feel decent about. And then the other pitchers I get to, I don't feel good about either. So I'm just playing a good amount of Corbin Burnes today and have very minimal confidence in his upside relative to his price point based on the decrease in strikeout rate that we've seen. But I just don't really know where else to go. Like, I'd rather play Corbin Burnes than Charlie Morton. I'd rather play Corbin Burnes than Tanner Beebe, although that's worth a discussion that we can have right here. But there are 3 popular pitchers today: Corbin Burnes, Charlie Morton, Tanner Beebe. Of the 3 chalk options, I feel the best about Corbin Burnes. He's where I'm going to be gravitating towards. Do you feel good about any of these other options as GPP plays? You're going to be going with Burnes, or is it somebody else at the high end that maybe stands out to you?
Yeah, Tanner Beebe is a guy that I talked about last night on Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks, that I kind of like the pitching profile we get from him, primarily just a 4-seamer slider combination. Throws in a changeup and a curve, but not really in any kind of a noticeable way. 286 xWOBA in the season, 25.2% K rate. It's the matchup that worries me about him, but sometimes with some of these young pitchers, guys that, I mean, this is his first season in the bigs, 3.29 expected ERA. You're going to run into these tough matchups and you got to just kind of roll with it. And I think the difficult thing for me on this slate is that because of the lack of other options, you're seeing ownership already exist on a guy like Tanner Beebe. But I do think that people are thinking the same way you and I are, where they're going to get to more Corbin Burnes. And he saves $1,700 over on DraftKings by firing him up against Boston. You have Devers, who I think is a little bit compromised by some kind of an injury. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that back, but has not looked the same from watching a couple of games on the old iPad here as I'm putting everything together every single night for the people in Premium Discord. But I think Tanner Beebe is an all right option to get to. I want to get your take on Logan Webb, because this Colorado lineup is absolute trash. It's missing so many different pieces, whether it's, CJ Cron, Chris Bryant. I think their 2 best hitters just not even there. I'm not a huge believer in Nolan Jones, although he does have a little bit of a speed component that hasn't shown up yet. Brenton Doyle definitely has a speed component that is there, but Logan Webb has the ground ball rate that makes me kind of interested in maybe taking a shot on him in Coors. He's sitting sub 10%. I think there's a case to be made for going to him, but I don't know if I want to be prioritizing him over the likes of a Burns and a BB. What are you kind of doing with Logan Webb?
Yeah, didn't end up getting there. So a couple
Okay.
of issues with Logan Webb, primarily just that he's pitching on the road in Coors Field, and
Seems
he's
bad.
picking up some ownership, which I would feel differently if he was projected for like 2 or 3% ownership, which I'm actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's where he was this morning when I was running some lineups. I think he was at 3% projected ownership, and I actually got some exposure there. As his ownership comes up, he just becomes less appealing. And we now got him projected for 10% ownership over on DraftKings. On FanDuel, Logan Webb, over there, he's only projected for 1% ownership, but he's $11,000. That's a steep price to pay on a single pitcher site. So in certain lineups where you could make a chalky stack, maybe a little bit contrarian, I think it makes sense to get to Logan Webb. But for the purposes of this slate where he's expensive and is actually picking up some ownership on DraftKings and FanDuel, I just think he's too expensive. Not quite getting there. So the way that I like to differentiate my lineups for today is just going super cheap at pitcher. And we'll talk more about that in a second, the ways that we can go about utilizing that. But guys like Logan Webb, I'm not getting to. Chris Bassett also. Bassett projected for 13% ownership against the Houston Astros. I can't really get there at that kind of number either. So Logan Webb, not really all that appealing to me, relative to his ownership at least. But is he somebody then that you're getting overweight to the field to, or is somebody else also that you're considering?
I'm considering him, and I think there's a couple of cases to be made for and against. The obvious one against is that you're in Coors Field, and we've seen good pitchers, whether it's Clayton Kershaw for his career, just get completely lit up there. It's the most difficult ballpark to go pitch in, and it's not just because of the dimensions, because it's such a hitter's park at altitude, but the altitude can mitigate some of the spin rate. One of the things that I think works for Logan Webb is that his primary pitch, that sinker, which he throws 41% of the time, throws it to both-handedness. I think because it already carries such a low spin rate that it shouldn't really affect him so much. It's a pitch that he's not really using as his put-away pitch. That usually ends up being the slider, which carries a pretty high spin rate. Even this season at 2,570 RPMs, that's down almost 58 RPMs from last season. That's still a decent amount on a slider as you look evaluating that across other sliders in the league. And then you look at the sinker, he's generating no swings and misses on it, but that's just kind of his primary get it set up pitch. And I mean, for me, it's more of like a strikeout upside at altitude. What does that look like for a guy in Logan Webb who last season had just a 20.7% K rate, this season up to 26.5? I think for me, the main reason I'm contemplating it and more likely to pull the trigger than you is I have no faith in this Colorado lineup, whether they're playing on the moon or in Coors Field, to generate runs without CJ Cron, without Chris Bryant. So Ryan McMahon, I think he's still going to be a guy that I get to. And I think you can pretty easily get to this Colorado lineup and stack them up as well, because it's just another pitcher in Coors. More than happy to take some of the leverage there. But I think Logan Webb is probably going a little bit slept on, considering, yeah, he's got ownership, which is different than most slates, but it's still in the single digits.
So the other player that I want to ask about in the high price range, and then I'm going to get to the pitcher that I really like to go to be contrarian today. Max Scherzer is no longer being considered an elite pitcher by the field, because there was a point in time where if he was pitching against the Atlanta Braves, probably just a couple of years ago,
he's a dog today.
Oh, sorry, what was that?
He's a dog today, which was wild to me.
Yeah. And the other thing, too, is he's not all that expensive. He's not projected for that much ownership. The matchup is brutal. He's on the road. We're getting to a point with guys like Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. The field just doesn't really want to roster these guys anymore. The results haven't quite been there. I'm not playing Max Scherzer today. Of all the players that I'm not getting a decent amount of exposure to, he's the one that scares me the most, that has potential to blow up the slate. Scherzer this year, the thing that stands out the most is, he does have a 3.21 ERA, but he's a 4.12 FIP. So it seems like there's a regression heading his way. The other thing too, his strikeout rate is 25.3%. That's the lowest it's really ever been for Max Scherzer. So there's definitely some red flags there. His velocity is also 93.7 miles per hour. So you got the lowest fastball velocity of his career, the lowest strikeout rate since like his third year in the big leagues or something like that. So there's red flags with Max Scherzer. He's on the road playing against Atlanta. So all that put together, I'm not quite getting there, but I'm going to feel like an idiot at the end of the day if Max Scherzer has a ceiling game at low ownership and I didn't play him. But what are you going to be doing with Max Scherzer in larger field tournaments? Because he definitely has a lot of name value.
He does, but I feel like you can say everything you just said for Max Scherzer, and you can apply it to John Gray for $800 less. And I think that that's where I'm just kind of landing on John Gray in a spot where the opponent's total is 0.6 runs lower. We're looking the difference between Atlanta and St. Louis. I'm getting the cheaper pitcher, and I kind of have the same concerns for both of them. And so for me, it's kind of like all things being equal, especially considering the ownership is equal on the two. I'm landing on John Gray right now. I don't have Max Scherzer. It feels sort of like a mistake, but Atlanta's actually a team that I have a couple of shares of across my 150, and I feel pretty good about it and might give them a little bit of a thumbs up here going forward. Max Scherzer's always been an extreme fly ball pitcher. That's his MO. He does have a 206 expected batting average. It's not like he's been terrible. The results just haven't been there in the results category compared to what we would expect for him. He's still got a 3.21 ERA, 3.31 expected ERA. He's decent enough, but this Atlanta lineup is no joke, especially if they start getting some production from some of these back half starters, whether it's Azuna, Rosario started to come to life a little bit. Harris still young. And even though it's been a really, really brutal year for him this year, and it seems like pitchers have made the right adjustments against him, he's the best defensive center fielder in baseball, and they're going to keep giving him as many shots as possible. So like, if they get that kind of productivity here, it's still a very difficult spot to go tangle with Scherzer. I'm more inclined to take John Gray shots against St. Louis.
All right. You ready for the dumb guy that I'm playing that's going to differentiate my lineups?
Yeah. Patrick Corbin?
No, not quite that dumb.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
We want to take one more guess?
Well, it's got to be the Houston guy, right?
Yeah. Ronel Blanco.
I'm taking shots on him too.
I'm not playing him quite as much as if you guys watched the Sims content that I put out on Twitter earlier in the day when I ran my initial set of lineups through. I think I ended up getting to him in 52% of lineups. One part of that too is our initial run of ownership, he was projected for 1% ownership, which definitely changed things. Now he's projected for 8% ownership, still low, but it's not as low as the 1%. And he's in about 30% of my lineups right now, Ronel Blanco. And this is less to do with how good of a pitch. This is all to do with this. The pitching options suck today. He's cheap and he's not popular. And he also allows me to differentiate some of my popular stacks. So like, I like getting to the Dodgers today. I like getting to the Giants today. And the easiest way to differentiate those really popular stacks is I just go really cheap at pitcher. It allows me to pay up for all the stud hitters. Blanco's not projected for that much ownership. The matchup is absolutely terrible. But if I have to pull out one positive of Blanco for today, he does have strikeout upside. And that's something we've seen pretty consistently, no matter what level of baseball that he's pitched in. And anybody might look at him and say like, oh, well, he's a reliever transitioning to a starter, but he did pitch 5 1/3 innings in his last start. So I'm not too concerned about the pitch count. And if you look at his numbers for this year, he does have a 24.7% strikeout rate. In the minor leagues, he had a 31.8% strikeout rate. I fully expect this to go poorly, but I like how he's able to differentiate some of my chalky stacks. So Ronel Blanco in my lineups, I'm well overweights the field on him. He's my most leveraged player of the entire slate. How much ownership are you comfortable getting to him in your lineups, Eric, as a cheap play who clearly has downside, but he's cheap and the pitching options kind of suck anyway?
Yeah, well, it's 5,200, which mitigates a lot of those concerns. I'm not in love with the arm. And I mean, Houston, they tend to develop these arms really, really well. Not just Hunter Brown, who is kind of like an outlier. Him, McCullers, guys of the last couple of years that are a little bit different. But we did see 94 pitches for him, which was just out of nowhere coming from AAA, where they worked him up for the last month. And then, well, he faced an Angels team that I do find to be pretty good, does have it an above 100 WRC plus, even against right-handed pitching. So I don't know a ton about him other than what we saw in AAA. None of that really impressed me all that much. He's 29 years old. Yeah. Just getting his first crack also doesn't impress me all that much, but he's cheap. And there's a lot of paths where he just gives you the bats and the opportunity that you want. And I feel better about him than I do about Jameson Taillon, who's a little bit more of a known quantity. I feel better about him than Noah Syndergaard, who I think is completely broken at this stage in his career. And we know all of the different things. Even if Jake Fraley gets scratched, I still can't take that shot. I think the only other guy that I would want to talk about from like a really cheap perspective is Jaime Barria, but he's pulling all that ownership. So I like your call about him being a 33.7% top 2 value pitcher, by far our best number that exists on the slate. I think it's just the price plus the possibility of not getting completely destroyed and still working out optimally on a slate with a lot of high implied run totals, whether it's the Dodgers, whether it's Coors Field, I think it makes sense to take those shots. So I have 18% currently. It might get to a little bit more now.
And then I have one other guy that I like, but it's FanDuel specific. Although I guess you could make a case for him on. Oh, all right. Try to guess again.
Well, I mean, this one's pretty obvious, right? I mean, this is. Know. There's no way that it's not Zach. Are you going Zach Davies?
No, Noah Syndergaard. He's so cheap.
Stop it.
He's so cheap. And the other thing too is he's cheap on FanDuel. I also think a lot of the Dodgers bats look really good. And there's just an obvious correlation there. If you get Noah Syndergaard through 5 innings in a Dodger stack and the Dodgers score a bunch of runs, you're going to get the win bonus out of him. He's only $6,500. And there just are not that, once again, just not that many good cheap options on the entire slate. So once again, when I was running my lineups through the Sims for FanDuel earlier today, the 2 pitchers I got the most exposure to using our Sims were Ronel Blanco and Noah Syndergaard over on FanDuel, where the win bonus matters more over there. And he's so cheap. If you get a win out of Noah Syndergaard, he's very live to land in an optimal lineup. And I think the Dodgers should win today. The question just becomes, are we going to get Noah Syndergaard through 5 innings?
Probably not, because he sucks. And Ellie De La Cruz is the truth. And Matt McLean is a stud. And FanDuel.com is the only place I can play them both in the same lineup. So thanks a lot, DraftKings, for not letting me stack up the two of my favorite young players in baseball into the same lineup together. Good job. Good effort.
Yeah, it's not one that feels good. He's picking up no ownership. He's cheap. And I just don't like the popular pitchers for FanDuel purposes when you start to consider what some of their price points are and the salaries. Charlie Morton's $10,500. You got Corbin Burns project for 20% ownership at $10K. You got Logan Webb we talked about before. He's up to $11K. Tanner Beebe's $9K on FanDuel and project for 15% ownership. So I just start to look cheap. And they got Jaime Barria's projected for 15% ownership on FanDuel. He's the second most popular pitcher on the entire slate. So here's what lineups are going to look. If you're playing on FanDuel and you're stacking the Dodgers or the Giants, Jaime Barria is going to be the pitcher in those lineups. That's why he's so popular. Like, he's the only really way that you could comfortably stack those top offenses. So if I want to play a Dodgers stack, or if I want to play a Giants stack, which I do today, I have to go to a different cheap pitcher than Jaime Barria, and that kind of lands me on Blanco or Noah Syndergaard. I don't feel great about it, but he's low owned, and there's a clear correlation with Dodgers stack. So I could get behind him from that standpoint. Is there anything else you see on the board at pitcher that you want to get to in any kind of meaningful way?
I don't know about in any kind of a meaningful way. I'm getting some shots on some of these really, really contrarian pieces. And this is kind of, what are you doing with Cutter Crawford? Because I don't think his pitch count can really get him to a place where we can get to like any kind of meaningful shares of him. But eventually he's going to go from these 40 pitches. I mean, at the beginning of the season, he was going, 93 on opening day, 72 back on, I know it was April 17th. Been a long time. But then ends up going to like a bullpen role, was out there for 3 weeks, and then 40 pitches last time out. If I knew I was getting 75, 80 pitches out of him, I think I would take some shots there at 6,800, mainly because the opportunity cost is nothing. Like, it's virtually nothing down sub 8K. There's nobody pulling any ownership besides Barria. But I don't think he gets there enough of the time. And then against Cleveland, it's not like there's this crazy amount of pronounced strikeout upside. They have a 19.4% K rate against righties on the season, despite their 77 WRC plus, which is at the absolute basement, worst in baseball. So I want to take those shots, but I don't think I can. I'm just kind of getting a smattering of everybody else besides him.
Yeah. So looking through my lineups here, like, I have him in for 8 fantasy points because of the pitch count concerns.
Yeah.
It's hard. I don't even think he's going to make it through 5 innings, and maybe he just works, hyper efficiently, but he worked 3 innings last time out. And then even that was only because he was super efficient. It's hard for me to get there just because of the pitch count concerns. Give me guys that suck and have less pitch count. Now watch, like, Noah Syndergaard's going to go out, and I'll be like, I wish he only threw 40 pitches, because he need to throw like 70 pitches and score negative fantasy points. But Cutter Crawford, a no for me just because of the pitch count, unless we find something out in the next few minutes that he's going to be totally unrestricted. But I don't think that's the case.
Okay. Just wanted to double check, because he was popping in terms of the top pitchers tool and wanted to at least touch base on that. There's going to be a day where you just see him ramped up immediately. I don't think today is that day. And I wish it were today because there's no opportunity cost down here. Like, I find it hard to believe somebody is going to just go out and eclipse 20. And if they do, why wouldn't it be Cutter Crawford if he got to 75 or 80? So I think there's the at least case that could be made for it. But I think I hate Noah Syndergaard on this slate, but for $200 less, knowing that at least he's stretched out and you have those mitigated pitch count concerns, I'm okay firing it up.
Anything else you want to bring up at pitcher? If not, we'll build some lineups in the lineup generator and see what that ends up getting us to.
Did you get anybody else on the cheap end?
Nope.
Yeah, me either. I just wanted to double check. Logan Webb, I'm definitely higher on than you. That's the last part.
All right. Let's bring up the lineup generator and look at Jordan Klein. Quick with it. He's already got it up on screen here. So if you guys want access to the lineup generator, which is the easiest tool for anybody who's new, starting out in MLB DFS, or somebody who maybe you don't have the time to watch all of our shows. Maybe you come home from work and you got like 10 minutes to go into lock and you just want lineups, bang, bang, made right out for you. Here's how you do it. You sign up for the MLB lineup generator. You use the link we have below, and that'll get you access for less than $5. So go take advantage of that. Because, like we said, this is going to be the easiest way to build lineups for DraftKings or for FanDuel. You just click a couple of buttons. You put a couple of suggestions. If there's somebody you love, you could lock them in. If not, it's going to do all of the heavy lifting for you. So we'll start with DraftKings, and then we'll build lineups for FanDuel afterwards. Let's go all stack types, Jordan. And we'll go balanced lineups today for DraftKings. We'll see what ends up popping up. And maybe we'll do a little bit different settings for FanDuel, and we'll see what ends up showing up. But yeah, save some lineups, discard them. Jordan's quick with the trigger finger. He goes back and forth like it's nobody's business. I'm seeing a lot of Giants popping up here. All right, so with balanced lineups on DraftKings, no real shock. Our most rostered pitcher was Corbin Burns. We got to a good amount of Charlie Morton, which I also don't think totally surprises me because when I run lineups through our sims, Charlie Morton also popped up as it was funny. The Mets were one of the top leverage stacks, and then Charlie Morton was also one of the top leverage pitchers. So it was kind of funny where it was like, it was just viewing this as a really high upside matchup to get to both sides of. And this is going to show something similar too as well in our lineup generator. So Charlie Morton, Corbin Burns. I wonder if you keep scrolling down, who else we got to a pitcher. Yeah. Blanco, not surprised. We were pretty high on him in our projections as a way to differentiate some lineups there. So Blanco and then Barria, the other pitcher that showed up there. And then if you scroll up, this looks like we're getting to a shit ton of Giant stacks. Yastrzemski. Yeah, so primarily Dodger stacks and Giants. Does anything about this surprise you, Eric?
No, not in the slightest. And here's the thing. If you look at the top stacks tool, it's going to tell you flat out that there's no way San Francisco Dodgers, like they're 1-2. Wherever you break them down, they are almost double that of number 3 in Arizona going up against Patrick Corbin in terms of top stack percentage. But there isn't that much negative leverage coming up on either of them. And I think that totally makes sense when you look at some of the prices of San Francisco. And with the Dodgers, you look at the pronounced upside and all of their numbers that they have. I mean, against both handedness of pitchers, but against lefties too, there are just some murderers. And I feel pretty confident that you run out this slate 1,000 times, 5,000 times, 10,000 times, you run it out. I find it hard to believe that those two offenses aren't optimal about a third of it.
Yeah, and that's also why before when we're talking about pitchers like Blanco, and I made a case for Noah Syndergaard on FanDuel, is we just have the Dodgers and Giants offenses so far above every other spot that I'm trying to find any kind of ways that I could be contrarian at pitcher in some of my lineups. And that's kind of have to go about it because you look in our sim tool, our lineup generator here, we're running lineups through simulations. We're getting to a lot of Giants. We're getting to a lot of Dodgers. Those are the two best offenses target on the entire slate. So let's go check out what comes up on FanDuel and build contrarian lineups for this, Jordan, because I want to see if there's anything different that shows up when we make contrarian lineups. Gut feeling. We're still going to get to a lot of Dodgers and Giants, but it's just going to give us really contrarian pitchers. That's my gut feeling here. And by the way, shout out to 3 Windy 1 City 2 up. This is super chat. You're going to like this one, Eric.
Okay.
It's hard to take Greg's input seriously with no bucket hat.
I do not fucking like it. I will amend what you just said.
What? By the way, I have a great birthday present lined up for you.
I really don't want to work here anymore.
What do you think I could get you for your birthday that would make you roll your eyes the hardest when you opened it up in the mail? Like a combination of your two least favorite things right now.
A real life mold of your you-know-what and a bucket hat.
Okay, no. I was saying something you would not like. So
sorry, I got confused. Okay, so just a bucket hat.
And what logo would be on the bucket hat?
Oh, stop it. Come on. Why? Why would you do that? It's a sensitive topic. It's been a day. Liv, I obviously know what it is.
There we go. That's what you're getting for your birthday.
Joe Adell recalled from AAA with the Angels. Let's go, Joe Adell. I'm so excited. Hunter Renfroe, I saw he was going to be on the paternity list. I picked him up everywhere in year long. It is Joe Adell season. Home run leader in AAA, my friends.
He always crushes in AAA, then comes up to baseball and only strikes out. You're going to enjoy your Liv bucket hat, by the way. It is going to be amazing. So our
Hunter Renfroe on paternity list. There we go.
Contrarian lineups we built out on FanDuel here. We got still a shit ton of the Dodgers. Actually a little bit less Giants here, right? I'm seeing that we're getting to a lot of Dodgers, but I'm not really seeing quite as many Giants popping up here, which that surprised me a little bit. Mookie Betts popped up in nearly everything. Chris Taylor, JD Martinez. We got to a bunch of Charlie Morton at pitcher. Who else did we get to at pitcher? Scroll down, Jordan. Blanco still at pitcher. I'm curious if Thor popped up in lineups. Tanner Beebe, he's lower owned on FanDuel. There it is. Like 12% of Syndergaard. So that's kind of what I was thinking. I thought we were still going to get to Giants, but building contrarian lineups. Yeah, we still got to the Dodgers, and then we just went contrarian at pitchers. So there we go. Any other stacks you're noticing here that we ended up getting to building contrarian FanDuel lineups?
Yeah, I mean, I see quite a bit of the Ohtani one-off and some of those Angels pieces, and I think that makes complete sense. I'm waiting. Did we get that Angels lineup?
Let's see. The Angels lineup is not out quite yet. We do not have it.
It's going to have Joe Adell in it, so I can guarantee you I have way too much of him already based on what I did with him last year.
We will see. Is he ready? So is he called up and ready to play today, or is it like he's called up and is going to play tomorrow?
We're going to find out, because I saw that Hunter Renfroe's wife was about to have a baby, and so I just picked him up everywhere again. He's just been destroying. You already laid the case out. I mean, he just destroys AAA every single year, gets called up to the show, and has a 40% K rate. So this will be fun. Can't wait to play him batting ninth and get a 0. That'll be great.
Got just overall message from here that I want to shout out from Nick Osteres is saying, is Zion officially a bust yet? LOL. Have you seen the Zion news?
He busted twice.
Yeah, I believe more than that, because where there's smoke, there's fire, as I've learned recently. So I have a feeling there's probably a lot more messages out there. But that was a aggressive Snapchat game by Zion Williamson. A big upgrade from the last time his chats got leaked. If you remember the previous one from a couple years ago, he has upgraded his game in a significant way. Like probably doubled it from a 5 to a 10, something along those lines.
Look at you go.
Good work by Zion Williamson.
Yeah, Zion is smashing. Not quite Jamal Murray smashing, but nothing better than Christmas Day at your in-laws' house. That's for sure.
And that poor lady who's probably just flattened in the bed and turned into a pancake. I mean, Zion, that's especially because don't forget too, this was Zion not in shape. Right, this was Zion with free time, so you know that he's been eating the barbecue down in Louisiana. So I mean, it's just a lot of heft.
Gumbo season.
More cushion for the pushing, as the people say.
On the tushin, yeah, it's good.
Let's talk about Sleeper, because they are the sponsor of today's show, and they've got a great deal going on here. Because for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you sign up at Sleeper using the link we have below, or use the promo code Stochastic, here's what you are going to get. You are going to get up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit. They have up to 100x payouts over on the site. Eric was playing around with it before. And I want to say, so we started the show like 3 minutes late. The reason we started late is because Eric was depositing money on Sleeper and he was building out a card. And his initial thing that he said to us was, I'm going to be looking at this forever. I'm addicted. I need to be using Sleeper. And also for today, if you guys build out a card, here's what you're going to want to include. Jimmy Butler over 0.5 points. I know him and I have been at odds at a point in time. He's going to score 1 bucket today. Jimmy Bucket is going to score at least one basket over 0.5 points. That is a free square for you over on Sleeper. So take advantage of that. And now, Eric, what else was in the card that you built around the baseball props that are available there in Sleeper?
Yeah, it's nice to know we don't need Jimmy Buckets to be buckets. We need him to be bucket. That's singular. That's really good stuff. I added Nikola Jokic triple-double to the mix as well. I mean, the prevailing number being, if you're looking at some of the sports books and such, a little bit better than even money you're getting there. Looking at the multipliers as you're going through everything over on Sleeper, looks fantastic to be getting better than that 2.04x on the triple-double play. Combine that with Yordan Alvarez, Tellez. Again, I thought I would just shoot for the moon right from the get-go on my very first card. I love Yordan Alvarez as a homer play going up in Toronto. I love Rowdy Tellez as a contrarian homer play. I pretty much target Baltimore pitching day in, day out. I don't find Kyle Gibson or Dean Kremer or any of these individuals to be all that precise or good. We saw Rodriguez sent down to AAA. I mean, Adley Rutschman is an absolute god calling games behind the plate. And if he wasn't, this pitching staff would be considered amongst the worst in all of baseball, that of like the Athletics, that of a lot of teams. Outside of Wells, I can't think of a single pitcher I'd want to be backing. So I have the best lefty power bat that exists in that Milwaukee lineup. Yelich, if you could loft the ball, that'd be great. So I took two aggressive home run plays along with Corey Seager. Nearly 2-1 that I'm getting there, nearly a 2x multiplier on 1.5 total bases. As I was going through it and comparing it to other places, that is by far the best number you can get on Corey Seager, a lefty, getting the platoon advantage, even against a decent righty there in Jack Flaherty, who's starting to figure some things out. But I still have a lot of concerns about what happens with him against lefties. And therefore, well, give me 2-1 on the 1.5 total bases there on Corey Seager. What a phenomenal app to be able to integrate into your process. You can have some really aggressive plays up to 100x. You can also do some of the more mitigated plays. I didn't get a chance to go through everything on the board. All I know is that Jimmy Butler and Nikola Jokic are absolutely getting it done for you today. So combine them with your favorite MLB plays.
Yeah, you got a handful of them there. Like you said, Yordan Alvarez, Rowdy Tellez, Corey Seager. That right there, a $10 entry by our friend Eric Lindquist. If all these lines hit, $821 coming back his way. So pretty good odds right there. Pretty good. He got 82-1. And like we said on Sleeper, you get up to 100-1. Just make sure when you sign up, you use the promo code Stochastic. That is going to get you up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit. And yeah, make sure you're taking advantage of over 0.5 points for Jimmy Butler. That is as free is going to get today. If you're anybody you know has a gambling problem, call or text the number 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's talk about some of our favorite stacks for the day, Eric. And I don't know how we get away from talking about the San Francisco Giants and the Los Angeles Dodgers. And here's a way that I think is a good way to open up this conversation. If you could only play one of the Giants or the Dodgers, what would be your preference?
Such a hard question. I'm pretty much straddling. As I'm going through everything in the Sims, I'm getting to a ton of both. It looks as though I'm getting to a little bit more of the San Francisco side. And I think that just has to speak more to the pricing of things. You get every single outfielder, 5 outfielders eligible there with San Francisco. If you count Mr. 7-hole Blake Sabel that's sitting there hitting 7th, but 5 eligible outfielders and nobody is over 4,300. You have 2 shortstops eligible. Nobody is over 3,800. No third baseman. Second base, Estrada's the only person in this entire lineup that you're paying more than 4,300 for over on DraftKings.com. You can incorporate a lot more Corbin Burns and Logan Webb, who I'm getting to. If Scherzer's your contrarian play you want to get to a pitcher, there's just some expensive contrarian pitchers. And as long as you aren't just jamming the chalk, you're looking pretty good at getting to San Francisco. And I love the Dodgers too, but I do expect them to carry. I mean, we saw yesterday, they carried all the ownership and all the land. It ended up being the Giant stack. And maybe we see that shift a little bit today. But based on what I'm looking at here, Mookie Betts, he's a phenomenal play, but 5,800. You've got JD Martinez sitting there, 4,800. Will Smith, 5,500. A lot of the guys you want to get to there are expensive and you're paying up for. So I will say slightly 1A, San Francisco, 1B, the Dodgers.
It's the Dodgers for me, just for the slightly lower ownership. So I'm a little bit more overweight to the Dodgers. We've got positive leverage on them as well. 14.4% projected ownership for them compared to 18% for the Giants. It's such a high number. 18% stack ownership there for the Giants. But no matter how you slice it, the ownership is more or less warranted on these teams. I think it's a little bit too low even on the Dodgers on the road in Cincinnati. Hitter-friendly ballpark, big park upgrade compared to playing in Los Angeles. So a little bit of a lean towards the Dodgers for me, and that's where I get different and play, like Blanco at pitcher is a way to differentiate some of those lineups. But the two top stacks on the slate, really without any kind of doubt for me. But if you were playing one lineup in a single entry, Eric, would you go to one of these chalky offenses, or would you go to a different team that is lower ownership?
I think so. I do have one single entry lineup, and currently it's a Dodgers stack. I'm changing it. I was always planning on changing it. I don't think I'm going to play San Francisco for it. I think this is where Arizona kind of gets the bump for me. You're facing Patrick Corbin, who's looked better in the last couple starts. And by better, I mean he hasn't gotten completely annihilated to the moon. He gave up 6 earned against Kansas City. Against the Dodgers, I would say kind of suppressed the bats by just giving up 3 earned. But he continues to just get by on a thread. The BABIP is kind of not in check. 4.92 ERA. I expect a team like Arizona, an offense that I think has definitely shown out a little bit this season with my guy, Christian Walker, Rivera now batting third today as a cheap bat at 3,100. Left on left, Corbin Carroll. It's not as appealing, but I do think there's going to be crazy low ownership compared to what we've had on Corbin Carroll on some of these slates. I don't like really the back half of the lineup, but in single entry, I think getting 1 through 6 and then maybe Moreno there sitting at the catcher spot, I really like that as the third highest top stack percentage on the board and the only one between all of the top stacks pulling positive leverage.
So I could tell you who I am playing in single entry. It makes it the easiest to answer this question. Although first, a little bit of cliffhanger here. We have to answer a question in Discord channel from Heflove. Heflove wants to know, are we worried about the weather in Coors Field? No, there's some chance of rain, but nothing that's going to prohibit the game from playing. And then something else also is there is some wind expected to be blowing out today, which is a benefit to the offense. So if anything, I think the weather is favorable to the hitting in that game. But just the way that I play single entry, I can't play a San Francisco Giants or Los Angeles Dodgers stack. And there is a team that's projected for positive leverage in our top stacks tool. When I was doing my Sims content earlier in the day, it was a team that popped up as being a very high positive ROI stack. That is the New York Mets. A couple of reasons. Charlie Morton is projected for a lot of ownership. That's always something I like to target. A pitcher that I think is a little bit of boom bust nature that's going to be popular in a smaller field tournament. And the other thing too is you got the Mets are one of the more positively leveraged teams in our top stacks tool today. 3.9% projected ownership, 5.3% top stack odds. If the Mets somehow outscore the Giants, the Dodgers, which I think is live to happen, right? We have them with 5% chance to be a top scoring team compared to about 15% chance for the Dodgers and the Giants. It's not totally out of the realm of possibility. There's a lot of firepower in the Mets offense, and it would give me added leverage as well because I expect Charlie Morton to be fairly popular in single entry contests. So I'm going to the Mets in my single entry lineup today. It's not one that I expect to work more often than not. We've got offenses like the Giants and the Dodgers are going to be uber popular in really good spots, but due to the ownership, and I think they're going to be like 2% owned, maybe even less than that as a stack in like the 121 single entry on DraftKings, I'm going to the Mets. Too risky, Eric, or can you get behind it?
Nope, I can get behind it. They were a team that I had targeted to try to be over the field on as well. We didn't even talk about Charlie Morton from a pitching perspective, which should be a little bit indicative of what you and I both think about him. He's not the same pitcher that he was before. It's not that he can't have crazy amount of upside because we've now seen 3 of his last 4 starts where he's had at least 9 punch outs. The ground ball rate is starting to trail back up. He's had 6 and 9 compared to 2 and 5 fly balls here in the last couple of outings. But Charlie Morton's not a pitcher that I'm getting to, and therefore I just got to get to some Mets. I'm about at the field on them right now, so I'm not against that as a single entry stance. You also look at just sometimes it's just as easy as looking at some of the implied totals. In Arizona, they are a 5.5 implied total going up against Patrick Corbin there, but they're pulling quite a bit more ownership there than the Mets. We're talking a little bit more than double as you're looking at the ownership share amongst that entire lineup. So definitely not against that as the play. Wouldn't be probably my first. It definitely, though, falls into my top 5 favorite stacks today.
Yeah, I'm well overweight to the field on them, which was also the case. So there's a lot that changed compared to my lineups that I was doing earlier in the day, which is going to frequently happen in baseball, especially when you get 2 games that are canceled because not even for weather, but for, bad air quality, not something you typically project for early in the day when it comes to baseball. But I do think the Mets just make sense to leverage spot when the pitching options are not great today. And you get this high variance pitcher going up against them who's going to be really popular. So I like the Mets for that purpose.
No.
They're low
Brandon
owned.
Katz likes Charlie Morton, though.
I mean, I don't mind Charlie Morton either. Like he's my
fifth. I'm not very high on him. I'm below the field.
I'm right about at the field on Charlie Morton. Like, I don't hate him as a pitching option. I think there's upside, but for single entry tournaments, I'd rather be on the Mets than Morton when he's expected to be really popular.
Agreed.
So that's a low owned team that I like.
Also in MLB DFS, why are we worried about what we think is going to happen? That's not the game that we're playing. Like what we think is going to happen. Like, I don't think Charlie Morton is just going to get rolled over. And I don't think you think that either, but the number of times that he does is just higher than what the field is getting to on him. Like it's a leverage game. That's what we're playing here in MLB DFS.
Not doing the ownership conversation with BK again today. Not today. We did it yesterday. There's only a few minutes left to go here.
Okay.
If we're looking at the rest of the stacks, are there any, because still, if you're playing large field tournaments, your portfolio should largely be built around the Giants and the Dodgers, but they're also really popular. So the spots that I'm overweight to is a team like the New York Mets. Are there any super low owned stacks, like teams that are 1-2% owned, you're getting overweight to in any kind of way?
Let me double check because I want to see where they're at currently. Where's Texas at? Texas is at 3.2%. Is that okay? Can I go with them?
Yeah. I mean, you can go with any team that's low on that you're overweight to. I'll accept it.
There's no Adolis Garcia, but sometimes what happens is that you get one massive great bat out of the lineup and you add a bunch of value. And I guess the value doesn't get you any pitchers you feel all that secure in today, but Jankowski batting 6th. You get Robbie Grossman batting 7th. You get Mr. Josh Smith batting 8th. And then obviously the big boppers, Nate Lau, Simeon, Young, Seager, Heim. I'm not going to be playing Sandy Leon because I think he's one of the worst hitters in the history of humanity. But 1 through 8, Texas, I just love getting to them today, considering no ownership. And I don't know, have they ever failed on an MLB DFS slate? It doesn't feel like it.
Not this year they haven't. This year they only crushed. I think there's been a couple times that they were chalky that they didn't come through. But by and large, it's been a team that's kind of flown under the radar and has had some really big performances. So the Rangers, they have a lot of talented hitters, particularly at the top of the order. And Jack Flaherty, another guy who's not the same pitcher as he was a couple of years ago. Remember, 2 years ago, Flaherty went on that run in the second half of the season where he looked like a Cy Young candidate. He's not that guy anymore. He got injured, has struggled with his health as of late, and just hasn't been really quite as consistent. So I don't mind that at all. For me, the team I'm the most overweight to relative to ownership is the New York Mets. I like the leverage I'm getting there. Another spot, though, that I like getting to is going to be the Washington Nationals against Zach Davies. The Nationals are really cheap. We actually have them as the top overall value stack of the slate in our top stacks tool. And then also, you got low ownership. Zach Davies is terrible. Like, I understand the Nationals are terrible, but that doesn't mean I think that Zach Davies is going to have success. Zach Davies has been pretty shitty for a while now. And another one of these pitchers, I think here's the most astute baseball point that Neil has made of the entire season. The pitchers that are impacted the most by the change in shift rules are any pitchers that pitch to contact, especially some ground ball pitchers. And if you look at Zach Davies this year, he's a 5.4 ERA. He's a 4.7 expected ERA. There's a lot of years for Zach Davies where he had decent ERAs, but was really lucky compared to his peripheral stats. I do not expect that to be the case this year. And it's just going to be really hard for these kind of pitchers that relied on contact and on low BABIPs to continue having that kind of success. Now the teams can't shift as aggressively. So we're seeing some immediate impacts on that on Zach Davies. The Nationals definitely present an easy matchup, but I think the Nationals offense is more talented than Zach Davies is as a pitcher, especially now that he's 30 years old and his average fastball velocity is, below 90 miles per hour, which has been the norm for him. So Nationals at 3% ownership, that's a team that I'm getting some exposure to and I'm about double the field on.
I'm with you. There's one batter in particular that I'm just higher on the field. Riley Adams, he's got a 42.3% hard hit percentage. I like getting to some catchers that are just pulling no ownership from time to time, mixing them in my 5-2-1s, 5-1-1-1s, and finding paths to them. Riley Adams is just showing up a ton for me today. Luis Garcia as well doesn't ever strike out. 284 expected batting average, 40.5% hard hit percentage. That's much better than you would expect for a guy with those kind of peripheral numbers as well. So there's some individual bats from Washington that I'm just kind of getting myself to a little bit more of. As a stack, I'm about at the field from what I'm rated about the field. Looking at our top stacks tool and comparing the two, there's positive leverage there. Don't mind that shout out.
Anything else you want to bring up before we get closer to lock here, Eric?
No, not really. I think San Francisco, I mean, you definitely want to have something in terms of groups where you can get to some of the more contrarian pitchers. If you're building out in Cruncher, if you're using the Sims tool, I think you're able to use the toggle where you're able to go between the pitchers and kind of like increase or decrease just ever so slightly, getting to more of a pitcher that you might have a preference for relative to ownership. Just like, I don't know where Corbin Burns ownership ends up, but I could imagine it ends up even a little bit higher because everybody kind of gravitates towards that one pitcher they feel secure about. I think Corbin Burns might end up being that guy for the field today.
All right. That is going to do it for us today. If you guys are not done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Don't forget, take advantage of that promo over at Sleeper. Over 0.5 points for Jimmy Butler. You're not going to find a safer play of the entire day today. You sign up at Sleeper using that promo code Stochastic. You lock in Jimmy Butler. You profit. It's that easy. We also got NBA Live Before Lock coming up later on the day, about 30 minutes from now, guys. So go check that out. Good luck today. Have a great night. See you guys back here tomorrow.
Good to see you again.
That too.